Hello everyone and welcome to our discussion on
Bună
the
ziua,
European Child
doamnelor și
Guarantee and how
domnilor,
we
bine
can
ați venit la
renew
discuția
the EU
noastră.
vision for its next generation.
Cum vom
I would really
reînnoi
love to
această
thank
viziune
our
pentru
distinguished
următoarea
panelists. Thank
generație?
you so much
Și vă mulțumesc
to the
frumos
audience and all of
pentru
those
prezența
of you that
dumneavoastră
are
aici,
watching
a
online. I know
specialiștilor
that
și
this
a
is a key
audienței.
topic for all of us and I
Știu că
really
este
appreciate
o
for you
temă
taking the
cheie
time
pentru noi
today
toți
to be with us at this
și vă
particular event.
mulțumesc pentru că
We
v-ați
have an outstanding
alocat
audience.
timp
I
să
would particularly want
participați
to
la
salute
acest
my colleagues,
eveniment.
members from the European Parliament
Aș dori
and
să
their
salut
assistants and staff,
colegii
colleagues from the
membri ai
European Commission and the EU
Parlamentului
Council, the
European,
honorable
membri ai
members of the national
Comisiei,
parliament that are
ai
actually present with us today, distinguished representatives of central, regional and local authorities and several
reprezentanți
member
ai
states, social
autorităților
partners,
locale
very
și
important
regionale,
for the topic
parteneri
of today,
sociali
academia
foarte
and national and
importanți
international
pentru
civil
discuția de
society mainly
astăzi,
focused on
membrii
children
ai
and youth.
comunității academice,
We have a really strong
activi în
lineup
această
and I'm
propunere,
very excited
în acest eveniment.
to be here with you and hear
Sunt
your
foarte
views on what the child guarantee must be and how it can actually
încântat
help
că mă aflu astăzi cu
European children and
dumneavoastră
indeed all of
și
Europe.
lucrăm
I would
împreună
like to
pentru
take the
dezvoltarea
opportunity
și
to
pentru
thank the
sprijinirea
European
copiilor
Parliament
europeni.
Child Rights Intergroup for their support, of which I'm
Mulțumesc
actually honored to serve as
suportului de la
vice-president.
Child
Just a few
Integrate
technical
Group pentru
announcements.
acest
All attendees
sprijin.
on Zoom can listen to us directly, and while only the speakers will be able to unmute their microphones,
Participanții de
we
pe
will
Zoom
be
ne pot
taking
asculta
questions from the
direct.
chat. So
Vom
please
prelua
write
de
short and
asemenea
concise questions and I
întrebările
will
din
endeavor
chat.
to redirect for both panels your questions to
Le
the
voi
speakers.
redirecționa
Those of you
întrebările
who
pentru
prefer can watch us
vorbitori
on
din
YouTube.
cele
The
două
link
paneluri.
will be provided via the chat, so please look at the chat. You will find
Vă
there
rog să
information.
vă uitați în
And
chat,
you also have
veți
the
găsi
emails that you
informații
receive
și
if you want to
adrese
watch the
de
recording at a later
e-mail.
date.
Vă rog să lăsați și adresa de
Our
e-mail
Romanian
dacă
audience can watch us
doriți
on
să
Facebook
vizionați
live
această
directly in
înregistrare mai
Romanian with
târziu.
sign language interpretation. I'm actually
Va fi
scribing together with my
transmisă
colleagues in European
prezentarea și în
Parliament
România
for
cu
the agenda of persons with disabilities,
interpretariat.
and I'm actually doing a little bit of small effort to try today with the aim to have more future with sign language available in the future.
Și vom încerca să păstrăm acest interpretariat și limbaj al semnelor și pentru viitor. Pentru aceia dintre dumneavoastră care nu mă cunosc, sunt Dragoș Păslaru, europarlamentar. Am proprii copii și pentru mine personal copiii sunt o temă importantă în dezvoltarea discursului politic. Pe vremea când eram ministru al muncii în România și odată cu începerea mandatului meu la Parlamentul European, este evident pentru mine că mai mult de un sfert din copiii Europei se confruntă cu sărăcia. Este datoria noastră să le asigurăm fericirea, bunăstarea și educația. Și să asigurăm integrarea acestora pe piața muncii.
I cannot feel there are things we should avoid doing from achieving this goal. I cannot feel that this can be a secondary topic.
Sunt obiectivele noastre și sunt sigur că le vom atinge. Vreau să împărtășesc cu dumneavoastră sentimentele mele ca membru al Parlamentului European. Reacția cu primul draft al programului de reziliență și reînnoire. Prima dată au fost rezultate zero. Din pachetul de reînnoire a viziunii pentru Uniunea Europeană și elementul cheie al acestui proces de redresare, țin să mulțumesc colegilor și membrilor echipei pentru că am reușit în regulamentele finale să avem un pilon de structură pentru Next Generation, pentru generația viitoare, dedicată copiilor. În urma tuturor greutăților am obținut acest pilon și să implementăm măsuri pentru protecția copiilor. Reușita pe care am avut-o în cadrul negocierilor și observând cum dezbaterile privind drepturile copiilor au evoluat, consider că avem toate ingredientele și toate instrumentele necesare să luăm acțiune. Avem această ambiție și pasiunea de a merge mai departe, astfel că avem nevoie și de coordonare. Parlamentul European trebuie să joace un rol important, nu numai noi, din partea financiară. Mi-ar face plăcere să discut mai departe despre proiectele mele, dar nu este doar despre mine discuția de astăzi, este despre invitații noștri, despre instrumentele de coordonare și cooperare în acest program. Trebuie să fim de asemenea inovativi. Avem un panel deosebit, de fapt două paneluri. Primul panel vizează sectorul public. Nu voi dezvălui mai multe și voi invita invitații să pună în discuție aceste probleme. Cu doamna Nicolsonova am lucrat în nenumărate rânduri și avem o relație profesională deosebită, dumneavoastră depunând eforturi deosebite în Slovacia. Mulțumesc foarte mult! Mulțumesc foarte mult pentru invitația la acest eveniment. Este o plăcere pentru mine să discutăm această problemă esențială. Deși Uniunea Europeană e considerată campion în protecția copiilor, atunci când ne uităm la cifre, lucrurile nu sunt chiar așa, merg destul de încet. Iar acum, în contextul pandemic, situația nu este deloc bună. Numărul copiilor care se confruntă cu sărăcia va fi chiar și mai mic. Numeroși copii trăiesc deja în Europa și se confruntă cu astfel de probleme din cauza sărăciei. Chiar și acum, în timp ce vorbim, mii și mii de copii din cadrul statelor membre încearcă să depășească aceste probleme. În zilele noastre am intrat în contact cu părinți singuri din țara mea, din Slovacia. Este de fapt grupul cel mai vulnerabil, iar acest grup vulnerabil a fost lovit foarte grav de această criză, pentru că mulți părinți și-au pierdut locul de muncă sau au fost nevoiți să-și închidă afacerile mici sau au fost concediați sau au avut contracte de muncă pe perioadă limitată. Discutăm despre familii fără venituri, care se bazează pe ajutorul de stat și care primesc destul de puțin de la stat. Vorbim de copii de 11-12 ani. Și acum copiii trăiesc și familiile din cu acești copii trăiesc cu maxim 15 euro pe lună. Astfel că părinții trebuie să decidă dacă plătesc abonamentul la internet sau se ocupă de educația copiilor. Această situație este prezentă și în comunitățile rome. Copiii romi cresc în medii sărace, fără să aibă acces la infrastructuri sanitare de bază, fără să aibă acces la o educație adecvată. Și ne punem întrebarea cum astfel de copii pot să aibă succes și să fie integrați pe piața muncii. Lucrul acesta duce la un cerc vicios. Copiii care sunt vulnerabili vor deveni mai târziu adulții vulnerabili, care duc la excluziunea socială. 85% din copii de origine romă, în comparație cu 90,6% copii, iar aceste procente vor crește în contextul pandemic. Dacă veți vizita aceste locuri dumneavoastră, veți observa că progresul este foarte încet. Și consider că trebuie să ne asigurăm că această schemă de protecție a copiilor nu este doar o schemă, nu este doar o idee abstractă, nu de dragul în sine al strategiei, ci pentru a sprijini acest copii. Trebuie să ne asigurăm că acești bani ajung la copii pentru o asistență medicală și o educație adecvată, pentru a extrage acești copii din acest cerc vicios. Mecanismul de redresare și reziliență vizează aceste lucruri. Dragoș, îți mulțumesc foarte mult pentru aceste cuvinte. Trebuie să subliniem faptul că acești copii sunt viitoarea generație și ei vor plăti pentru datoriile noastre. Aș vrea să subliniez importanța sistemului de educație pentru dezvoltarea competențelor necesare în vederea incluziunii pe piața muncii de mâine. Trebuie să meargă mână în mână cu incluziunea pentru a ne asigura că aceste probleme nu vor mai fi o chestiune în dezvoltarea viitoare a noastră. Sunt mulțumită și mă bucur că am ajuns la această etapă și că aceste resurse vor fi utilizate pentru implementarea programelor viitoare în vederea îmbunătățirii sistemului de educație și de sănătate pentru copii. Vom oferi ajutor nu numai copiilor, ci și părinților din această grup. Încercăm o abordare de prevenire, ajungând la familiile copiilor înainte de a ajunge în situații grave. Așa cum reiese și în recomandarea Consiliului din 2014 și garanția că vom dezvolta aceste strategii. Garanția pentru copii, în vederea dezvoltării garanției pentru copii, învățăm să asigurăm un viitor bun copiilor, tuturor copiilor care au nevoie de acest lucru, indiferent de zone, chiar în zone defavorizate. Vorbim de grupuri defavorizate cu un singur părinte. Cum spuneam, aceștia au fost afectați de criză foarte grav. De asemenea, avem nevoie de date care să monitorizeze aceste etape, nu numai funcționarea bună a instrumentelor, dar și evaluarea acestora. Monitorizarea datelor în statele membre pot fi selectate sub formă de bune practici și implementate în întreaga Europa. Țin să evidențiez importanța acestui proiect și faptul că
Thank you very much, Chair. Lucia, this was really well put, and I think that was a very serious message sent about the importance of several segments of vulnerable groups of children, and I really appreciate that. Our next speaker is a person who, beyond an impeccable professional and being the leading voice of the Portuguese presidency of the Council of the EU on Social Affairs,
experiența profesională, s-a implicat cu entuziasm doamna ministru Ana Mendes, mama a 3 copii, ministrul portughez al muncii și solidarității și securității sociale. Este plăcerea mea să acord cuvântul Anei. Bună dimineața tuturor din Portugalia, mulțumesc frumos pentru invitație, mă bucur să iau parte la acest eveniment, o discuție provocatoare pentru noi toți. Stimate domnule comisar, dragă Dragoș, doamnelor și domnilor, mulțumesc pentru invitație, pentru a participa la acest eveniment dedicat Garanției Europene pentru Copii. Mulțumesc Parlamentului European pentru aceste eforturi privind drepturile copiilor. Așa cum Lucia a menționat, ne confruntăm cu situații destul de grave și trebuie să combatem acest inamic invizibil care cauzează atât de multe traume în viețile noastre și să răspundem acestei provocări. Persistența sărăciei și șomajului crește datorită situației pandemiei și copiii și familiile acestora se confruntă cu aceste probleme tot mai des. Discutăm astăzi de soluții globale integrate. Noi, Europa, regiuni, state membre, orașe, trebuie să acționăm și să rămânem uniți. Nu putem risca o schimbare a situației, nu putem să pierdem ce am reușit să obținem până acum și trebuie să mergem mai departe, cu rapiditate, să abordăm situația cu care ne confruntăm, copiii care sunt izolați, care sunt acasă, care nu merg la cursuri, care se confruntă cu perioada de criză generată de situația de pandemiei. Suntem capabili să combatem efectele negative ale pandemiei asupra copiilor noștri. Este evident că trebuie să acționăm împreună. Este calea sigură și unică pentru a depăși momentele pe care ne confruntăm. Astfel putem câștiga o bătălie destul de grea. În ciuda îmbunătățirilor evidente din ultimii ani, copiii Uniunii Europene continuă să fie în pragul sărăciei și excluziunii sociale. În special, dacă vorbim despre 20% din populația Europei, 100 de milioane de copii care locuiesc în Europa, 20% din populația Europei. Combaterea sărăciei în rândul copiilor este foarte important. Portugalia plasează drepturile copiilor în elementele cheie ale agendei de lucru. Știu că Parlamentul European a depus eforturi pentru acest proiect și vă mulțumesc pentru eforturile depuse. Este important pentru toate statele membre să investească, să dezvolte strategii pentru a se asigura că acești copii care se confruntă cu greutăți își permit și pot avea acces la educație, la nutriție, locuințe și activități culturale și de recreere. Combaterea sărăciei în rândul copiilor este esențial să asigurăm egalitatea de șanse și dezvoltarea copiilor este vitală pentru viitorul Europei. Vom discuta despre pilonul drepturilor sociale și am invitat copii să participe la aceste discuții, iar unul dintre copii care a participat la aceste discuții publice, Anton se numește, am rugat copiii să își împărtășească cu noi unele dintre dorințele din partea Europei. Iar Anton a spus, dorința mea este să apăs un buton de reset pentru toată lumea. Este un copil care ne cere să resetăm Europa. Astfel, consider că această temă trebuie să fie elementul cheie al planului de acțiune pentru drepturile sociale ale Europei. Trebuie să ne axăm pe aceste transformări, să schimbăm ce e nevoie să schimbăm. Aș vrea să vă prezint ce am făcut în Portugalia pentru drepturile copiilor. Am adoptat recent o strategie pentru drepturile copiilor pentru perioada următoare, pregătind de asemenea un plan de acțiune, o strategie analitică structurată pe 5 priorități. 1. Egalitatea șanselor pentru toți copiii. 2. Sprijinirea familiilor și părinților. 3. Promovarea accesului la educație și participarea pentru dezvoltarea pentru piața muncii. 4. Prevenirea și combaterea violenței asupra copiilor. 5. Dezvoltarea măsurilor și instrumentelor pentru a garanta că vom dezvolta o viziune viitoare pentru dezvoltarea copiilor. Ne adunăm și adunăm lângă noi participanți ai lumii publice. Am lansat și dezvoltarea pentru o strategie în dezvoltarea copiilor și în planul nostru național de reziliere și redresare am alocat un loc important pentru a investi în răspunsuri sociale, echipamente dedicate facilităților pentru copii, pentru a sprijini și ajuta familiilor, a facilita accesul egal tuturor copiilor. Aveam un program special pentru a avea o îngrijire a copiilor înainte de grădiniță, creșe, tocmai pentru a garanta dreptul la egale. Am inclus investiții speciale pentru refacerea locuințelor, protecție socială inclusivă pentru toți și programe integrate pentru a combate sărăcia din zonele speciale promovând și oferind instrumente specifice pentru integrare, dedicate competențelor și calificării, ca și instrumente cheie care pot face diferența, ca să garantăm că acești copii au acces egal în zona digitală. Prezentând acestea, subliniez că ținta noastră esențială este să garantăm că putem merge mai departe. Zaturile sunt aruncate, ambiția este mare, trebuie să mergem mai departe și să avem garanția că nu lăsăm pe nimeni în urmă. Este generația care ne va ghida viitorul și se plasează în topul agendei naționale și europene. Haideți să construim împreună progres. Portugalia va face tot ce poate pentru a atinge aceste ambiții împreună cu dumneavoastră. Mulțumesc Națiunilor Unite și vă mulțumesc pentru intervențiile provocatoare și care ne motivează mai departe. Cu siguranță va face diferența în ceea ce vom reuși mai departe. Mulțumesc foarte mult, domnul ministru, dragă Ana. Sunt încântat că de fiecare dată când ne intervii în aceste discuții, cauți și citate care să ne motiveze. Mai ales că punem în discuție și strategiile pragmatice de dezvoltare din Portugalia. Ultimul, dar nu cel din urmă, vorbitor de astăzi, comisarul Nicolas Schmit, comisar pentru locurile de muncă și drepturi sociale, o persoană cu o vocație pentru drepturile sociale și aspecte privind piața locurilor de muncă. Nu numai Garanția Europeană pentru Copii, dar și alte politici care urmează să vină. Domnul Nicolas Schmit a participat activ în toate acestea.
Voilà. Go.
Thank you very much.
Mulțumesc foarte mult, dragă Dragoș.
I have also 4 children, so we have
Și eu am
some
4 copii,
legitimacy for this.
așa că
So thank
avem
you for organizing this
o
important
luptă
event
comună de
at
dus.
this very
Mulțumesc
moment.
pentru invitație.
I think this is very important.
Este
to
foarte
put,
important
the issue of children in the forefront.
să punem în discuție și să aducem în atenția tuturor problema copiilor, Garanția Europeană pentru Copii. Suntem pe punctul de a adopta planul de acțiune pentru pilonul social. Este exact momentul potrivit să avem această discuție privind sărăcia în rândul copiilor. Îmi place expresia Anei când spune că trebuie să resetăm, să apăsăm butonul pentru reset. Este o ocazie unică să resetăm situația, să apăsăm acest buton. Avem resursele, mijloacele, ați menționat despre planul de redresare și reziliență, numit următoarea generație a
are our children, are all the children in Europe. And unfortunately, there are too many poor children in Europe. We still have 18 millions of children at risk of poverty or social exclusion in the European Union. 22%, that's more than 1 child out of 5 being under this risk of poverty. And when we are talking about poor children, well, poor children are children of poor families. And we see that families with 3 or more children are much more exposed also to the risk of poverty, plus 6%. So having a lot of children like we have, 4, well, there is a risk for many families, not for us, but for many families in Europe to be much more exposed to the risk of poverty. And this is something we really have to change. Unfortunately, we have achieved only slow progress in reducing child poverty. And child poverty is a long-lasting effect, because when you are a poor child, the risk that you will be a poor adult is high, and you are denied a lot of opportunities. So when we are talking about equality of opportunities, and that's one fundamental principle also of the Pillar of Social Rights, well, poor children, they do not benefit of this principle of equality of opportunities. And we need to enhance now our investments in children and in social cohesion if we want to build resilient economies and fair and inclusive societies. And I also thank Lucia for what she said about the disadvantaged communities, and particularly the Roma communities. And because this is also something, as Europeans, we just cannot tolerate. And I thank her in particular for her commitment and her engagement also in favor of this community. Well, we define child poverty based on the income of the household in which a child lives. It is therefore apparent that in order to eradicate poverty, we need to start by improving the economic situation of families and their disposable income. At the same time, it's crucial to break the intergenerational transmission of poverty by supporting equal opportunities of the most vulnerable. And here, certainly, the labor market is key. And we see that having a low participation in the labor market, or being finally somebody with low wages, low income, well, this is then producing poverty, and this means also that children are impacted by this situation. So this to fight poverty, child poverty, this can only be done by fostering parents' access to the labor market, supporting the creation of decent jobs with fair wages, adequate working conditions, minimum wages which allow, as the President of the Commission has pointed it out, a decent living, strengthening social protection systems, also transfers, especially transfers for families with children, and ensuring training on the job and for those looking for new opportunities, and securing adequate social benefits. These objectives are actively supported by the Commission through policy guidance, country-specific recommendations, funding, as well as targeted measures. And last October, we have put forward an ambitious legislative proposal on adequate minimum wage, and therefore fighting in-work poverty is also a mean to reduce child poverty. The fight against inequality and poverty will also be at the heart of our action plan to implement the European Pillar of Social Rights. The proposal for a Council recommendation establishing the European Child Guarantee will be among the first deliverables following the adoption of the Social Pillar Action Plan. Let me focus on the European Child Guarantee, which aims to break the intergenerational cycle of poverty and to ensure equal opportunities among children. It will do it by focusing on children in need, in particular on children at risk of poverty or social exclusion, and disadvantaged children. And here we are back to the different communities, minorities, which suffer particularly from poverty and exclusion. It will guide the member states in ensuring a guarantee for children in need based on effective and free access to key services, such as early childhood education and care, education and cultural, leisure and sport activities, healthcare, adequate nutrition, and decent housing. To be effective, the child guarantee will need to be developed within an enabling social policy framework based on an integrated and multi-dimensional approach and articulated within national plans with a strong territorial dimension. Finally, to be successful, the child guarantee will need to be accompanied by overall strategic investments, both in infrastructures and in the labor force providing the key services at the heart of the child guarantee. We need adequate funding at EU and national level. And certainly I will work together with Commissioner Ferreira to look how we can also orient part of the cohesion funds to investments in favor of children. In the recent agreement reached by the European Social Fund, plus co-legislators decided that member states where the incidence of child poverty or social exclusion is above the EU average for the years from 2017 to 19 will have to earmark at least 5% of their share of the fund to measures tackling child poverty. All other member states have an obligation to program an appropriate amount to implement actions against child poverty. Member states can make use of structured funds, and I've mentioned the cooperation with Commissioner Ferreira, but also REACT EU and obviously also the Recovery and Resilience Facility. And in this regard, the Recovery and Resilience Facility constitute an opportunity to ensure a successful, sustainable, and inclusive recovery and greater resilience of our societies. The role of the European Parliament in the negotiation, and I must say of Europe particularly, engagement was very instrumental in enhancing the social dimension of the new instrument, paving the way to socially balanced national recovery and resilience plans. In particular, the sixth pillar of the RRF scope and the related assessment criteria to be used to evaluate the national recovery and resilience plans will ensure that the RRF will be used to address the needs of the next generations, namely youth and children. This means, for instance, to combat child poverty as well as address youth unemployment and the worrying rate of needs through reforms and investments in the areas of basic and higher education, skills, and lifelong learning. Investments in social protection and in services of general interest, such as national health and social protection systems, as well as access to long-term care and early childhood education and care systems, will also be key in view of a resilient and inclusive recovery. Member states will soon submit their final national recovery and resilience plans, and the Commission is in constant contact with all member states to discuss the preparation of the plans. To date, there has been substantial progress, and for most member states, we have a relatively good overview of what they intend to include in their plans. I strongly encourage member states to integrate a strong and well-articulated social dimension, covering employment, skills, and social inclusion in their national recovery and resilience plans. In this regard, there is still a lot of work ahead. Even those member states whose plans are most advanced need to translate ideas into concrete measures, reforms, and investments with specific milestones and targets, which will allow for monitoring of progress in the implementation of the plans. I think that Anna has already indicated what is done in Portugal. And I think these are good examples how not only national policies, but also linked to the RF, there can be a lot of progress achieved. Now, to finish, I would like to express again my gratitude to the European Parliament, and again, particularly also to you, because you provided a significant drive towards the European Child Guarantee, the resolution of 2015, the preparatory action since 2018, and most recently a comprehensive and ambitious resolution on the strong social Europe for just transition last December. So thank you for your commitment to really push social Europe forward. And secondly, fight against inequality can be won simply by action at EU level alone. It requires member states, regions, local authorities, social partners, and civil society to actively work on the implementation of concrete measures, including by looking more at the distributional impact of their policies. Keep this in mind when talking about the European Child Guarantee also back home. So thank you very much again for this possibility. We are at a very important moment, and now really, as Anna invited us to do, we have to push the reset button. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. Dear Nicholas, indeed, this is an amazing opportunity that we have ahead. You've provided the vision and the leadership on that, and I'm sure that we will achieve quite a few things during the Portuguese presidency, as Anna has actually mentioned. Now we have some time, about 20 minutes for questions. I know that there are, a lot of knowledgeable people here, and again, please ask your questions in the chat. I see already the first question from Mihaela Ionescu. So she is representing ISSA, and she's actually drawing the attention on the youngest children, the under 3 years old, that are most at risk and still too invisible and in policy and funding priorities, with those years, being the most crucial ones for long-term impact. So the question is, what type of support will be provided to countries to develop multi-sectoral policies, funding, and plans focusing on children? And I will take the second question from Eurocities, Bianca Farago. Different cities and regions in the same country have different groups of children in need. For example, in capital cities, there are more migrant families than in other cities or rural areas. So the question to speakers, how can we ensure that the EU Child Guarantee will make a real difference for children in need and address their specific local needs? So 2 questions, and I'm looking at the panel to see who would like to provide a response. Maybe I'm looking at you, Nicholas, for the first one related to multi-sectoral policies, especially for the children that are at very early ages. Please.
You put it very rightly. The early years in the life of a child are extremely important. And therefore, we have to focus a lot of our action for the small children. And that's why a quality childcare, especially for those families, for those children coming from disadvantaged environments, have to be put into place. That's one important aspect of the child guarantee. So it's I don't know, the kindergarten and even before the kindergarten, where really poor children have to have all the same opportunities, because we all know that here there's a lot of differences made already, which then when children go into school will create a lack of opportunities for the poor children. And this has to be put into place at local level, because the children's, the care units, the pre-scholar education, all these are organized at local level. And therefore, we want the child guarantee to be very much connected to regional, to local authorities. Certainly, member states have a role to play, because very often they have also to participate into the financing. But we have to really outreach to the local authorities and build up this network for early childhood, this care network. And that's what I said also with the connection to Elisa's, Commissioner Elisa Ferreira's field on cohesion policy, because very often poor cities cannot afford building good childcare infrastructure, because also the infrastructures are needed. And therefore we have to invest here in poorer regions, in poorer cities, in rural areas. We have to really help the local authorities to develop these infrastructures. And then obviously we have to have skilled people, because quality childcare means quality people taking care of the children. So this is a whole approach we have to promote. We know this is a high investment, and therefore we have to also to have solidarity at European level to contribute to the financing of these policies.
Thank you very much. I'm looking at Minister Ana Godinho because, her experience in Portugal, I'm sure that relates directly with the question that we receive for both, cooperation with multi-sectoral policies and cooperation with the local and regional authorities. So if you would like to tell us a little bit of the practical experience that you had in Portugal and what's actually planned. Thank you.
Well, I will tell you exactly what we've been doing in terms of a national plan to increase the capacity of childcare infrastructures, namely for nurturing. In the last year, we've approved around 20 million investment in 40, it's just an example, of 40 new nurseries. And we do this in a collaboration partnership with local authorities and with social economy. So this is a tripartite model. What I can also share with you is that we looked and we are using the RRF, the Resilience and Recovery Plan in Portugal, exactly to include in our RRF strong investments, not only in child care infrastructure, but also long term. So we looked also at the RRF as an opportunity to increase the capacity in terms of child care infrastructure. So infrastructure on the one side, so we are investing on this through a tripartite investment with the social economy and local authorities on the one hand. On the other hand, we introduced also a measure to guarantee free access to nurseries for families with lower incomes. We started this last year exactly to guarantee that children below 3 could access without paying for families with lower incomes. On the other hand, and about what you asked about specific programs attending specific needs of local areas, again, in the RRF, in our proposal, our Portuguese RRF, we included a special measure dedicated to combat poverty in what we called poverty-specific areas, namely concrete urban areas that were very affected during COVID, because areas where many migrants live, that had specific problems, namely in terms of integration and in terms of social security inclusion, and in terms of income and of precarious work. So an integrated program to address specific concrete programs in specific areas. So we included this in the RRF. That's why we believe the RRF is a critical and a huge opportunity for this type of very focused programs to address very concrete problems. That's what we are at least counting, and we believe that this can be the moment to use this European instrument that is so determined at the moment we live.
Thank you very much, Minister. From the registration forms that we've been kindly receiving for this event, we had a question from the Radost Zaharieva from the European Public Health Alliance. The question was, reflecting on the links between structural discrimination against children from vulnerable groups such as Roma and migrants, leading to a higher exposure to poverty and social exclusion. What are the mechanisms that the Child Guarantee can provide or should provide to tackle both structural discrimination and child poverty? And I would actually direct the question to our chair from the Employment Committee in the European Parliament, because she was actually working quite a lot on Roma communities. So Lucia, please, you have the floor.
Yes, I think that when we're talking about, how to help children, we of course have to focus especially on the vulnerable groups, and we are able to define those vulnerable groups. Either those are the single parent families or children from separate, segregated Roma communities who live in really terrible conditions when we are talking about the 21st century. And these children, from my experience, really need access to quality services, starting from the age of 0, from the very beginning. In my reform, I suggested that we would create teams of experts who would actually on a regular basis go to the settlements. They would work with parents, with small children from the very beginning, so that they can identify the main problems or disabilities or either health problems or psychological problems and prevent bigger problems to come, So this was a part of prevention program. And I think this is something that those countries who have significant numbers of people from Roma minorities, especially talking about separated and segregated settlements, should start and should focus also on their recovery plans. These children from Roma communities, they suffer mostly from social deprivation, and therefore they need to be integrated as soon as possible. And this can be done through the access to nursery facilities for early childhood facilities. Of course, we have to take in mind very low income parents. So just as Anna said, the experience from Portugal, the access, there has to be a free access for these children. And of course, nothing can be done without very good cooperation between the national and the local authorities. I think very good instrument to help, especially the parents, is through the social economy, because we have to provide them with the access to stable income, to stable jobs.
Thank you very much, Lucia, for this insight. We have right now quite a set of questions. One question that we are actually having is from London, from a community in London, and the question is coming from Adina Maglan. She's actually pointing the fact that there is right now a young community or young EU diaspora in the UK, oftentimes seeing themselves as ghost children due to a lack of identity or shared identity right now that has a lot of negative consequences. And the question that Adina Maglan is actually asking is, what are the plans post-Brexit for the young EU diasporas in the UK, the young EU children outside the EU and the UK being the case? So that's one question, and I would take actually 3, and I would kindly ask you then to see how we can answer. Then we have actually a question coming from SOS Children Villages, Valerie Ceccherini. How could we encourage all EU member states to use the Resilience and Recovery Facility to support the implementation of the Child Guarantee? How will the European Commission take this into consideration in their review of EU member states' plans? And then there is another question coming from the General Directorate for Social Assistance in Sibiu, Romania, Laura Vulsan. Will the recovery and resilience mechanism take into account the financing of family-type social services and other family alternatives? So 3 questions right now, and we see if we have some time for others. So I guess that Commissioner Schmidt, I mean, the Commission is asked directly about the implementation of the RRFs. I will give you first the floor. Please, Commissioner.
Mute.
C'est la question sur le
RRF.
Well, I think I have already presented that the RRF should also be used for investing in social services, and including also childcare. And I think the best example is that Anna has told us that indeed the Portuguese government has included in their national plan this social dimension and also the financing of a strong network for childcare. Now we have to see how many countries will use that way. It would be absolutely important, and that there is a lot of investment also in social infrastructure, because we all know, we have now discussed that at length, that investing in social services is good for the resilience of our society, but at the end it's good for our economy, because we will need qualified, skilled people in the future. And those who are excluded from that, finally, we will not have them into our economy, and they will not have the skills needed for a much more innovative economy. So I think this is, in that sense, a social investment, but it's also, in a way, an investment in the future of our economy, much more based on technology, but also on all kinds of skills, not only technological skills, but also, by the way, what we call soft skills. And here also the early age childcare is very important in that respect. So I think we have to encourage member states to put more money here. I think just a very brief comment on Brexit, if I've well understood. Well, I think we all regret Brexit. And those who are in the UK as EU citizens should not consider themselves as now excluded citizens. We try to guarantee to them all the possible rights, also in this context, and certainly we will see that in the future the ties with the UK, especially the human ties with the UK, will be much stronger than those who wanted the separation could expect.
Thank you very much. We have a question directed to Minister Godinho. The ambition of outreach to all children who need is very positive, but how can member states be pushed to make that really happen? Shouldn't they identify specific vulnerable groups and define action plans to reach out to them, and also to organize participation of these children and parents in design, monitoring, and evaluation of policies? I mean, this is actually a question that directly relates to the Portuguese experience as well, but also to the leading at the council level right now with the EPSCO's agenda. So, Minister Godinho, I would kindly invite you, dear Anna, to respond to that. And then, unfortunately, we are kind of running out of time, so we will wrap it up. So, Anna, please. Anna, you need to unmute yourself. I'm trying, yeah. So we need to unmute you. I don't know exactly why is it muted. Now it's working.
It is?
Yes.
Yeah, I wasn't doing on purpose not to answer. That was not a technique. It was... I really wanted to answer. Well, I think the question was not only for me, but I would say also to Commissioner Nicholas Schmidt. But I'll state what I think Europe can do, and I hope I have a lot of confidence on the recommendation that will be produced. That will be a very strong sign to the countries exactly to follow this recommendation about the child guarantee. Also, the action plan that will be deliverable by the Commission, I think Commissioner will confirm, I think on the March 3rd, will be also a critical instrument to be a roadmap and also what I believe should be the backbone of the recovery and the resilience plans with concrete and ambitious targets, namely in terms of combating child poverty. So this could be a very strong instrument that could also be this guideline and reinforce the need for member states to act.
Thank you very much. We will conclude this panel with the promise that we are going to take all the questions and with the, I mean, if it will be possible for our distinguished members of the panel to allow us to send the questions and maybe answer them in written, that would be really great. And then we will communicate it to the answers to the asking parties. The last word, the concluding remarks from the European Parliament side, Lucia, please, I would invite you to have the concluding remarks for this panel. Thank you.
Thank you very much. To conclude, I would choose also one of the questions: how can NGOs help? So that we implement the child guarantee schemes. I think this is a great opportunity for them to create the pressure on governments to have the first European pillar of social rights as the backbone of the recovery plans, and also the children and the youth in the center, because I mean there are the new generation, and it's the new generation who will pay the debt. Of course, the situation varies from member state to member state, but I think that it's very important also for the NGOs to be involved in the discussion and also the preparation of the recovery and resilience plans. I mean, we have to have in mind that from vulnerable kids become vulnerable adults. It has a very party the children are in right now causes really long-term problems, not only for the individuals but also for the whole society. And together with children, we have to start working with the families and with parents, and we have to involve them. We have to find a way how to find a stable jobs, stable income for them, because this is the shortest way for kids to get out of the poverty or not to fall in the poverty.
Thank you very much for these concluding remarks, Lucia Nikolsonovna, Chair of Ample Committee in the European Parliament. Thank you very much for having, taking part of this debate, Minister Ana Godinho from Portuguese Presidency and Commissioner Nicolas Schmidt. We will send you the questions and again also a brief of the main things that will actually come out of the second panel. If you can attend the second panel as well, I mean, that would be great. Otherwise, we will brief you. Thank you so much for that. That was really lovely. Thank you. We move right now without a break because, I mean, the whole point is to have a dense discussion and focused on these topics. And after this really interesting session with the policymakers who have actually put the proposals on the table and will actually shape the political agenda in Europe and in the member states, I think right now it's vital to talk to the stakeholders. And we've seen the array of questions that you've already put and the insights, and I think that this is where the expertise lies. And I'm really interested about this particular second panel. I think that what we will actually do in this second panel is we should actually hear to solutions that are actually at hand from the grassroots initiatives and from all the stakeholders that will actually help us, break the vicious circles of poverty. This is why the second panel today would be actually probably as interesting as the first one. I would dare to say more interesting from a pragmatic point of view. And we have representatives for several key actors that are involved in the fight against child poverty. And I would actually like to invite for the opening of the second panel, and I can't see a better choice for that, the President Marie-Louise Coleiro Preca, the 9th president of Malta, a distinguished parliamentarian, a shadow minister, and now the president of Eurochild. Ms. Preca leads the foremost children's rights federation in Europe. We have collaborated since the start of my mandate, and theirs is a voice that we all certainly must listen to. So, President Preca, please, you have the floor. Okay, this was a technical thing. So right now it's working. So thank you very much, President, and you have the floor, please.
Thank you so much, Mr. Pizarro, for bringing together this important meeting of like-minded people committed to children's rights and to the fight against child poverty. We at Eurochild work with and for children throughout Europe, striving for a society that respects their rights. We fight against child poverty and advocate for systematic reforms. We strive against structural inequalities. Our call is embedded in our belief that member states need to invest in all the children living in Europe through education, through healthcare, housing, family support, and childcare. Our strength and inspiration are derived from our members, that is, from our grassroots, and in particular, through the direct involvement of children in our work. Children are our experts. They influence our strategies and policies to be able to advocate and work closely with the European Union institutions. Well, allow me to take advantage of this opportunity to say that we deeply value our cooperation with the European Parliamentary Intergroup on Children's Rights and with you, Mr. Pizarro, because as you said, we have collaborated with you from the very start of your mandate. To us, you are also a champion who is tirelessly fighting to put children at the heart of Europe's recovery. Well, investing in all children living in Europe is essential. Our call today, during this discussion, is happening at a very crucial and historical time. This discussion is happening when the European Union is about to launch the Child Guarantee, and when all European governments are working on their recovery plans. Children have been speaking about their diverse situations. The report launched this week, Our Europe, Our Rights, Our Future, which brings together their voices, have resulted in a very vivid and stark picture of the diverse situation that the children of living in Europe are facing. 10,000 children from across Europe are telling us that 1 in every 5 children that live in Europe are growing up unhappy and anxious for the future. 1 in every 4 children feel that their rights are not taken seriously. 1 in every 3 children have experienced some form of differential treatment, with far more girls being treated unequally. Over half of children living in Europe with disabilities, migrant children, asylum-seeking children, children from ethnic minorities, or identifying as LGBTIQ+, are experiencing unequal treatment. Almost 1 in 3 children are unable to pay for example, school trips and books, leading to social exclusion and reduced life chances. Nearly 1 in 3 children lack access to necessary health services. 1 in 4 children do not always have enough to eat. I will stop here because I can continue quoting from this important report, which really bring forward the voices of children. On the other hand, we cannot speak about investing in children without mentioning the disastrous impact that the COVID-19 pandemic has compounded on children's well-being. Eurochild's Growing Up in Lockdown report describes that the combination of financial stress, uncertainty over the future, and families being confined to home during lockdown has led to the compounding of further vulnerabilities on the pre-pandemic vulnerable communities. The pandemic has increased anxiety, mental health problems, and violence against children. All this is coming from the grassroots of Europe. Even children with no history of behavioral problems are struggling to manage strong emotions, and many do not know how to cope with the stress, the worry, or the frustration. School closures caused additional stress for children who miss the social contact and structure that school provides. For children already living in poverty, it meant increased hunger as they missed out on free school meals. Homeschooling also highlighted the educational divide and the digital divide. This ongoing situation is making it even more urgent to act. And for this reason, since the very beginning of the pandemic, we have been urging European leaders to recognize the necessity of investing in the children of Europe. The European Union is putting in place the largest stimulus package in its history, the Next Generation EU. These resources must be used to invest in all children if we truly want a sustainable and equitable and inclusive and a peaceful Europe today and in the future. And as you, Mr. Pizarro, has said in the European Parliament plenary session about 2 weeks ago, and I quote you, you said, how can we talk about a next generation EU if we are not going to deliver to the children and youth of tomorrow? We totally agree with this statement. We often refer to children as the future generation, but we need to remind ourselves that children are the most vulnerable and affected community today. Children are also the present. They are living now. It is now that we need to invest in them to reach their full potential for themselves and their communities. Moreover, our governments and policymakers need to realize that there is no better investment in sustainable long-term socio-economic development than investing in children. This is a historical opportunity for our governments not to fail our children. And when I say our children, I mean all the children living in Europe are our children. For this reason, we welcome the agreement reached on the Recovery and Resilience Fund, which prioritizes children and youth. And we thank you, Mr. Pizarro, for your dedication in ensuring this. We have been also advocating for a strong and strategic European child guarantee, which will be fundamental in protecting the most vulnerable children and trigger national spending and services for children and families. In the past years, we have relentlessly advocated for the child guarantee to be sufficiently financed. And therefore, we are glad to see that an agreement was reached on the ESF Plus, which foresees a 5% of the resources to be earmarked to address child poverty. We are also glad to see specific commitment from member states to allocate sufficient resources to combating and hopefully eradicating child poverty in Europe. Europe, one of the richest continents in the world. Despite this achievement, our work is far from over. We need to ensure that member states will use different European funds for investing in children, and that the EU funds and national budgets are used strategically and in line with the child guarantee. We must continue to urge European and national policymakers to acknowledge that investing in children is a prerequisite to ensure a fair and sustainable European recovery. We must ensure that children's rights will be prioritized by the national resilience and recovery plans, and that their needs will be comprehensively addressed. We must ensure that the child guarantee will be a specific and strategic instrument to invest more and better in the prevention and reduction of child poverty in Europe. We need to be sure of what is going to be guaranteed and of who is guaranteeing it. Monitoring and evaluation of the child guarantee at European level will be essential. Our members want the European Union to ensure strategic and independent mechanisms to monitor the implementation of this instrument. Civil society, children and families must be key actors in the implementation and monitoring of the child guarantee. But for this to happen, we need to guarantee a better understanding of these vital frameworks at the national level. Many national organizations and policymakers are still not familiar with these instruments. This may lead to investments having little or no impact on children in need. The implementation of the child guarantee should be underpinned by other initiatives in the scope of the pillar of social rights. Strengthening of essential services should be seen as a panacea to child poverty reduction. An integrated approach is needed, is essential. And to conclude, this crisis is providing the European Union with a unique opportunity to build a more social, inclusive, and just Europe. Investing in children means investing in a fairer and stronger Europe, which will protect all its citizens from the long-term impact caused by the pandemic. It means strengthening the legacy of our founding fathers and founding mothers for a peaceful Europe, free from inequalities and injustices. The time is now to invest in all children living in Europe. And I will end my contribution with a quote from Nelson Mandela, when he said, "History will judge us by the difference we make in the everyday lives of our children." Thank you.
Thank you very much, President Preka, for the factual base, which is kind of portraying a grim situation of children in Europe, but also for your emotion and passion and the call for solutions and cooperation at all levels. I mean, this was a very important and emotional plea, and I will thank you very much for that. We are right now moving forward. We have a slight change in the agenda. Our second speaker would actually be one very special guest. It's Mayor Rafał Trzaskowski. He leads Warsaw, one of the most important cities in the European Union, but also is member of the board of Eurocities. He was a fellow member of the European Parliament, a Polish parliamentarian, a minister, and a state secretary, and right now is a key figure for social reform and social campaigns in Poland. Dear Rafał, welcome, and as one of the leading in the fight against child poverty on the ground, and there's a recipient of so many of the EU policies and tools, tell us, what are your expectations from the European Child Guarantee? Please, you have the floor.
Yes, finally unmuted. Hello, everybody, welcome. It is a pleasure, dear members of the European Parliament, dear Commissioner, dear Minister, dear friends. Yes, I'm the mayor of the capital city of Poland, but I'm also the treasurer of the committee of the Eurocities, and also a member of the Committee of the Regions, where obviously social justice is one of our key priorities. And we welcome all the policies of the European Union which are aimed at fighting child poverty, and a national child guarantee is one of those ideas that actually push us all forward. And let's hope that it will, because this is one of the problems that we have on the ground and we need to address as quickly as possible. We've been trying to actually invest as much as we can, and we've done quite a lot for the child care system since I took office in 2018. One of my electoral pledges was that we are going to actually do preschools and creches for free. And we've done a little revolution in 2 years, because not only are we building new preschools in Warsaw, but we also have a program whereby we help entrepreneurs to actually build businesses and then offer places for free for all the kids from 1-year-old upwards. And that's what we've achieved. We were able to double the number of free places in preschools in Warsaw just in 2 years. And this is one of the schemes which is pretty interesting, and I think that it could be copied in quite a lot of other cities. Of course, the problem is that we are doing it all from the city budget. And as you know, now in times of COVID, there are quite a lot of constraints. And that's why we need to take actions together on the European level. At the same time, we've actually invested in quality of assurance and training in child care providers. So we are training child care providers in order to perfect their skills. And of course, also COVID-19, which produces quite a lot of problems for all of us, but it also creates certain possibilities. And we are trying to use them, for example, to innovate and digitalize social services and to reorganize the child care system to extend, for example, trainings online, which proved to be quite successful. So we are doing things on the ground, but obviously now we are looking at the programs of the European Commission in order to see how we can create synergies. Warsaw is providing help for children and families, and we are prioritizing children and investing many resources of our budgets to that purpose. And we are also trying to create synergies on the European level. For example, 64 cities joined the Eurocities campaign, Inclusive Cities for All, in which 18 signed specific political commitments to prioritize children, committing together over 6 billion euros in support children in need. And of course, we all know that cities play a key role in fighting child poverty. We are at the forefront of change when it comes to reducing inequalities, and of course now fighting COVID. And when trouble looms on the horizon, of course, our citizens turn to us to help. We, for example, have the scheme whereby we give free lunch to our children in a difficult situation in schools. And when schools were closed throughout COVID, we had problems. I mean, kids were coming to schools in an expectation that they would receive a meal. And of course, the schools were closed. So we decided to open kitchens in some of the dispossessed districts of the city in order to feed our children. And we are doing it, and it has proved quite successful. We are also sending parcels to those families which are in need. And we've done quite a lot to narrow the gap in access to services and opportunities for children, because this is absolutely top priority. In order to do that, we need to take care of the whole family, work with the non-governmental organizations. And that's, of course, one of our primary goals. It's not easy in Poland because, as you know, we have a strange government, to put it mildly, which fights local governments. Mayors are enemies number one. Non-governmental organizations are enemy number one. So we are trying to get by and do it together, but it is difficult to cooperate with the national government. That's why we need pressure from the European Union in order for those priorities to be actually met. There's always a problem of resources. As I've said, most of the things that I've enumerated were done from the city budget, which is dwindling, as with every city, and I'm in contact with my friends all over Europe and the world. We've seen 20% drop of our income coming from various sources because of the epidemic. So we are struggling, and that's why when the Commission puts its ambitious agenda on the table, the important thing is that it will be followed by resources, for example, from the European Social Fund. And child guarantee as such should be a guarantee for investment in children and nothing less. We all know that it has a territorial dimension, and we all know that every crisis is also an opportunity. And that's why we're looking at the recovery plans, and we're seeing a certain possibility of actually tackling the problem of poverty and the problem of inequalities. And that's why we need to pressurize the national government to use the recovery funds in such a way that it also addresses the priorities that we set together in the European Union. One of the most important ones is obviously fighting climate change, that the Polish government is reluctant to do, unfortunately, right now. But the second, which is right there at the top of the priorities, reducing inequalities, fighting child poverty. And that's why we need to do it together to pressurize national governments so that they consult us, consult the regional authorities, consult the cities, and that they include us in planning. because it is impossible to meet any of those ambitious priorities in the European Union without including the cities. Try fighting climate change without the cities. Try being innovative without the cities. Try fighting inequalities and help children without the cities. And of course, we all know that structural funds are there to help the underdeveloped regions, and that should stay as our priority. But with the recovery fund, we also need to find a way in which those priorities are financed in the cities, because we are at the forefront of fight and we know how to do it. Now, to ensure it makes a real difference for the children in need, in our opinion, the EU Child Guarantee should, first of all, close the gap in access by supporting local child guarantee schemes to adapt services to local needs, to make them available to children close at home, as close to home as possible. This should be one of our priorities. And as I said, we have programs ready. We know how to do it. It's a question of resources and a question of cooperation, creating synergies, creating benchmarks, so we do it in the most effective way possible. Secondly, boost local level social investment in children by allocating sufficient resources from the EU national budgets to cities and allowing us to use them in a flexible manner. And finally, as I've said, one of the most important things is to involve cities, involve the regions as partners in developing and delivering the child guarantee, because multi-level governance with joint responsibility and coordinated strategies between local, national, and European level is absolutely crucial. If we really want to achieve that, we need to do it together. And sometimes those plans prepared by the European Commission, which are very ambitious, and thank you for that, usually leave most of the responsibility to the national governments. My plea to you, and I submit that to you, is that we need to do it together with the local government, with the NGOs, with the civil society. And the European Union, the European Commission have to make sure, also with the help of the European Parliament, that the criteria for allocating money from the recovery fund are transparent, that they're non-political, and that you include all of us in proposing and then implementing change. And this is the position of the Euro cities. This is also the position of the Committee of the Regions. I know that we can do it together. And if we are serious about it, we need to do it on the ground. There are some good examples from Warsaw, but there are some fantastic examples from all the cities which are grouped in the Euro cities. Let's do it together. I hope that we can create the right synergies. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Mayor. Thank you very much, Rafael. This was really a leading speech towards the local the city agenda, and this was a very, very nice insight. You've mentioned about the need to invest and to need to work together, and these are two important takeaways. So thank you for that. We are a little bit late in terms of time, so I would kindly ask everyone to try to be as concise as possible. We are moving forward with again an amazing speaker that is representing, is the voice in Brussels of Business Europe. I'm talking here about Maxime Ceruti. It's actually a speaker that has a wealth of experience in representing the leading federation of business in Europe on topics which are sometimes quite vast. On the next generation and on the topic of children and youth, I'm actually quite certain that all businesses and companies have as much as to gain from investing in skills, in early childhood and in education. And I'm looking forward to hearing more on this. So thank you very much for accepting the invite, Maxime. You have the floor.
Dear Dragos, it's a pleasure to see you, and I thank you for the invitation to today's event. I think, of course, it's a timely discussion that we have today, and I would like to bring to your attention the perspective of employers. I know that Lina will speak later, and some of what I'm going to say also relates to our cooperation with trade unions as part of our social partnership. The first point, and perhaps a bit differently to what I could hear so far by participating, is of course that we need in the discussions on a child guarantee to make the link with the situation of parents. Because of course, disadvantage for the children is often connected to a family situation. That means that in terms of providing solutions, I think we need to, of course, focus on the needs of the children, But at the same time, an important part of the answer has to do with the social integration, the social participation of parents. And of course, this is where, as employers, we have a particular interest to bring solutions that help reduce inactivity levels in our societies and to make sure that as many adults as possible are going to be in work. And of course, we have, depending on the countries, more of a concern or less of a concern in terms of the inactivity levels. But I think we should also look at this from the angle of demography. And I think, as you know, we are aging in Europe, and this is a challenge in maintaining and ensuring sustainability of our social protection systems. So I think a key point is that we need to have the best use possible of our working age population. All the people that can work, I think, would also be more satisfied and happier in their lives if they can be in a job where they have some recognition for their competencies and skills. That leads me to some specific comments on childcare. And for us in this debate, childcare should be at the center, because this is where there is a positive agenda for the children, but also for the parents. Because of course, if childcare institutions are in place, it means that both parents can work. And we know that there is a big issue in Europe, in a number of countries in particular, where women's employment participation is much lower than men's. In average, it is 17.4 percentage points difference, which is very significant. And of course, what I'm mentioning here as a figure takes into account not only employment participation, but also the working hours, which tend to be much lower for women as for men. So we need to improve the employment participation of women, and childcare is very important in that respect. You know that there are targets that exist linked to the Barcelona process, and there we are calling together with the trade unions, and we had a joint statement in this area at the end of last year for a revision of the Barcelona targets, and particularly for the young age between 0 and 3, we should increase the objective from 33% to 50% coverage. But it's not only about the very young. I think we should also take into account the fact, and we saw it during COVID, of course, parents have been working from home. It's been a challenge to combine work and family responsibilities. And it's also showing that there is a need for a bit later in the age of the children for solutions for after school hours, so that parents can also be at work. When it comes to education, I think there is, of course, a lot to be said, and it is a priority to make sure that as many children as possible have access to basic skills, basic digital skills. Access to having the right equipment is, of course, an issue. And I think now that we are in the recovery and resilience facility programming at member states level, these two issues, childcare and infrastructure for better functioning of schools and access to digital skills through digital learning methods in school is, of course, very important. But it's also, there is the issue of dropouts. We need to pay attention to have as many young people as possible succeeded in their education. From that perspective, I think that the situation of boys need to be taken into account from a gender perspective, because they are performing less well than young girls overall in education. But it's also about the gender dimension for young girls. There, I think the issue is to have more young girls interested and attracted in learning STEM fields of education, scientific and technological, engineering and mathematics, and that starts from a young age in life. So there is to do in education. It was already touched on. I found interesting the presentation of Warsaw Mayor. Of course, it is about administrative effectiveness in managing the relevant institutions. And of course, there are two sets of issues, I think. One is the verticality. So you need to make sure, depending on the countries and the constitutional setups, that the various levels are playing their role in an effective and cooperative way. But the second is also horizontal cooperation. I think that depending on the situation of individual children, there may be a need for support by different institutions, from social assistance to more education support, or sometimes perhaps justice. And of course, the disability issue of the children also needs to be kept in mind, to make sure that the institutions are as equipped and responsive as possible. I think we also need to improve data, having a good understanding of the issue, to make it more comparable, to have information gathering both on a quantitative level, but also qualitative research to be carried out so that we have a better understanding of the issue in different countries in view of the particular societies and how they function. And probably there is some learning potential in that area. I think the learning potential is, of course, connected to the European semester process. And when it comes to the European semester, it's also about learning how can we reduce inactivity levels in our societies. There is a debate coming on social economy. I think social economy actors have a role to play to ensure the social inclusion of as many adults as possible, as I was starting. And in conclusion, I think, of course, that early intervention is important because the longer the response and the higher will be the individual costs for the persons that are in a situation of disadvantage, and also the societal costs relating to non-intervention or late intervention. So I think we need to be trying to have responses that are effective and early. At the same time, of course, we need also to be realistic on the state of public finances. Recovery and Resilience Facility provides for some useful support, but we also need to keep in mind the importance of having, in the long term, strong public finances that are balanced. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Maxime Ceruti, for the insights coming from the employer side. We are right now shifting a little bit the angle, we are actually going to look more about the situation on the ground. And my country, Romania, has actually the sad situation that it generally leads child poverty levels in the EU year after year. And Executive Director Gabriela Alexandrescu, our next speaker from Save the Children Romania, has actually been fighting this fight for over 2 decades now. She is, I would argue that one with the most experience among us on these issues at the grassroots level, and her voice is actually comes with this, a plethora of experience and countless studies, policies, campaigns she has led, and countless children that she has actually helped. So, dear Gabriela, please tell us, what would you expect from the Child Guarantee to bring to the European Union? Please, you have the floor.
Thank you so much, Mr. Căsularu, for this event, for organizing this event and invited Save the Children to be part of the panel. I appreciate all the inputs that the distinguished speakers brought, and I say hello to all our participants. For Romania, Child Guarantee and the system to ensure Child Guarantee will be vital, because in all these years, the children rights have been split among different ministries, authorities. It wasn't a holistic view, a comprehensive view about children rights, and the situation is critical, both before the COVID-19 crisis and after its outbreak. Romanian children have been more vulnerable to phenomena that severely impact their rights and well-being. And I will give you some figures just to underline what I said. More than 1/3 of the Romanian children are at risk of poverty and social exclusion. The percentage is higher than the EU. And for children living in rural area, poverty being 3 times more than for the ones living in the cities. Romania continues to be the country with the highest child mortality among EU members, double than the EU average. There are only 3% of Romanian children benefiting from early care and educational services. There were, in the beginning of 2020, more than 270,000 children with the age between 7 and 17 not in the school system, and each year there are more than 45 pupils which is dropping out of school. And Romania, it's also the country with the highest number of girls who become mothers before the age of 15. This is due to the lack of this comprehensive view and investment in children. And the pandemic period led to even further challenges regarding the access to education, nutrition, medical care, and protection. And for this reason, Save the Children in Romania, we were higher up our activities in 2020 to be able to help as many children and families, to help them enter into education, helps giving them psychological support material and information, protection materials. And we reach more than 370,000 children. And what we saw in these years, in these 30 years working for and with the most vulnerable children in Romania, we witnessed how, and in the last year, it was very easy to see, in crisis situation and whenever the governments fail to ensure all rights for all children, the most affected are always the children who grow up in poverty or fall under other vulnerabilities such as disability, lack of parental care, or migration. Therefore, Save the Children has been advocating for and now is saluting the steps made towards the adoption of the EU Child Guarantee, both as financial and a political agreement in the benefit of vulnerable children across Europe. Learning from the fields, we have some recommendations. And we need a child guarantee policy framework that will be ambitious and will support EU member states to tackle child poverty in a comprehensive way. Child poverty is not only about lack of financial or material resources and does not last only for a generation. Poverty impacts many of the children's rights and tends to be inherited across generations. This means that fighting child poverty should go hand in hand with fighting parents' poverty, as poor children are living in poor families. What we want is the Child Guarantee Council recommendation should make a specific reference to that and should call to members to invest in activities that will support children accessing services, but also parents accessing the labor market and other financial resources. The political agreement of the ESF Plus, European Social Fund Plus, shows that the EU institutions understand the urgency of member states to invest in child poverty reduction. But we need to ensure, and you need to ensure, that all EU member states allocate the appropriate ESF Plus resources to tackle child poverty, as child poverty is a pan-European phenomenon which affects all EU member states. Those with lower GDP per capita is Romania, but also the one with a higher GDP as Sweden. And similarly to the SSF Plus, the political agreement on the Recovery and the Resilience Facility shows that the EU leaders understand the importance of investing in the EU next generation. However, this should not be only left in words, it should be translated into concrete action. And we salute the openness of the Romanian authorities to both prioritize children and consult with the civil society in the process of developing. We are now working in developing together of the National Recovery and Resilience Plan. And I think it's important for the EU institution to make sure that all EU member states include investment regarding to children well-being in the recovery and resilience plan, and working together with civil society. Also, what we have in mind that there are other funds that could be used to support activities with aim to fight child poverty, such as European Regional Development Fund, that will support the developing of infrastructure, so should be also used. And let's not forget that the EU budgeting wisely is equally important to using national budgets wisely. So member states should have to invest strategical from their own resources as well. And finally, last but not least, I would like to underline the importance of child participation. Children in need that will benefit from the child guarantee should be empowered to say what they want, what works for them, what their challenges are, and what will make their lives easier. We cannot develop policies for them without asking them, and where relevant, their parents too. And Mr. Păslaru, in the description of today's event, you mentioned that NGOs and the civic sector are some of the more knowledgeable actors in the fight against child poverty. I would like to close by adding that we may be more knowledgeable in the fight against child poverty, but the most knowledgeable are children themselves, exactly the vulnerable children with whom we work, and we will facilitate for all the process this work together with you and the children and our authorities to have a national resilience and recovery plan fit for them, for present and for future. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Director Alexandrescu, dear Gabriela. I think that indeed you were so right in drawing the attention to the fact that we are actually talking about children as if they cannot actually voice themselves what they are concerned. And I really enjoyed in the first panel the fact that Minister Ana Godinho has actually voiced Anton's message with the reset button, and sometimes you really need, I mean, not sometimes, all the time you need to actually hear these voices. I mean, you are completely right. We are right now moving to, or our next speaker that is coming actually leads the introduction, and both in the EU bubble and beyond. I mean, we are having right now the privilege of having the Confederal Secretary of the European Trade Union Confederation, Lina Kar. She's a vibrant and ever-present voice on issues such as the European Pillar of Social Rights in Brussels. And in my capacity as Vice Chair of the Trade Union Intergroup in the European Parliament, we meet regularly. And it's always a pleasure to learn from her experience, and particularly the experience of the European trade unions. So without further ado, Lina, please, you have the floor. I for some reason I cannot hear you, Lina. So if you can, I don't think you are on mute actually.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Now it's perfect. Thank you so much. Please.
Good, great. So thank you very much for the invitation. And indeed, also from a trade union point of view, the issue of child poverty is very important. If we kind of want to start with a light-hearted joke, I could say that guarantee all parents quality, well-paid jobs, and we have tackled the child poverty. I would say just that and say, I've done, finished. However, we all know that this is not possible. This is not going to happen. So we have to look into this issue far more seriously. It is also clear that for trade unions, we look at it from the lens of the labor market and how we can support families. As a number of previous speakers have said, and the Commissioner emphasized in the first panel, poor children come from poor families. So one element indeed is what is happening in the labor market. How high is unemployment? What kind of jobs do we have on the labor market? And who can access these jobs? Very clearly for us, we need to increase women's participation in the labor market. We know that many women are, dare I say the word, punished for having children because they have to take time out. Then they have caring responsibilities and can't return immediately afterwards. And this has really negative impact, not only on their career progression, but also their income, which then translates later into reduced pensions in old age. So it's a circle. From in the trade unions, when we look at the child guarantee initiative that is coming from the European Commission, I think the publication should be on the 24th of March, so quite soon. So from our point of view, for us, all children must have access to free healthcare, early childhood, what we call the educare, so the access to nurseries, kindergartens, creches. But also very important element is the healthy nutrition. There are ample studies that have shown a child with a full tummy at school is a much better learner than a child with an empty stomach suffering from hunger. The issues that have been exacerbated by the COVID have been highlighted already previous speakers, so I'm not going to address them again. But also on top of this, it is very important that the families have good housing, because one thing is the child leaves the home, goes to a kindergarten, goes to school, and uses the facilities there. But then the child comes back home, and this home also needs to be a place where the child is safe, warm, and has the enabling environment for studying and personal development. Very clearly, quality education, but also after school, access to after school activities is important. Very clearly, the need for assistance to families and enabling services is something that needs to be brought to the forefront when we are talking about the recovery, but also beyond, because it's not only for the recovery from the COVID crisis, but this is for the benefit and the well-being for the societies and our economies, that we reduce exclusion, social exclusion, and poverty as much as possible. So investment in reducing social exclusion in our societies is also very important. I very much agreed with Commissioner Smith when he talked about the issues facing in the labor market, the participation, the wages, but also from a trade union point of view, I can't but to insist that one way of increasing wage, increasing the quality of jobs, guaranteeing healthy and safe workplaces is through collective bargaining. So the need to strengthen collective bargaining to facilitate negotiations is important. We know that unfortunately in today's Europe, in the European Union, we still have governments who take active steps to limit and to fight against trade unions. And this is not going to do any good to the future of our societies or the economies. Also very important is that the proper wage and the value is put to what we now call to essential workers, the frontline workers. They are one of the lowest paid in our societies. Very often they are women, very often they are mothers. So put the proper value and pay proper wage, and they can also then provide much better for their children. Just to conclude, to recap. So what are we looking from a trade union side? First of all, guarantee quality jobs with decent wage to parents. And that will help us to reduce child poverty. Guarantee the supporting services and access to quality and free childcare. Also education to all children and after school education for children. With this, you lay the foundations for more prosperous societies and more rounded individuals, the ones who are going to be more secure when they need to adjust, adapt, change their jobs in the labor market. In such a way, we actually create happier, healthier, more cohesive societies. And without such societies, the economy cannot be healthy either. I noticed, if I may, just very quickly, I noticed in the chat there was a question on the involvement of civil society organizations. From the trade union side, we are, through the semester process, we have been conducting surveys now for a number of years on participation. Unfortunately, there is one pattern that is becoming very clear. Participation, or the involvement, at least from the trade union side, depends on the color of the government. But it also depends on what kind of traditions for a dialogue you have in society. If there is a strong, long tradition that goes back years for social dialogue, you also have much better participation and consultations with social partners. Now, with the Recovery and Resilience Funds, we know that there is no direct obligation to involve stakeholders in the regulation. We tried to get it in there. We weren't successful. What we got was that the member states have to report back to the European Commission how they have involved social partners in the process. We have been running our survey since October last year, when the Commission started consultations with member states. Up till the end of January, the picture was really, really poor. It has improved a little during February, but basically next week on Monday, we are in March, and the plans have to be submitted by the end of April. So this is one of the big problems, one of the big issues. And we also heard it from the mayor of Warsaw, that this civil society, the regions, the players on the ground, they are not actually involved and they are not consulted. And that will only weaken the plans. That will not only weaken the quality of the plans, but this will also weaken the ownership of the plans. And it will make much more difficult to have really good reforms for the benefit of all, and not only for reducing child poverty. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Lina. This was, a cold shower in terms of the realistic situation that we have. You know that we, from the European Parliament side, we actually fought for more consultations with the stakeholders. At the beginning, there was nothing. At least we got the fact that the member states need to describe in the plans and mandatory how they consulted the civil society. But obviously, there are cases where these consultations are just formal and they are not actually, taking into account, properly the views. So you are right on that. Now, we are right now at the end of our second panel. Unfortunately, we don't have too much time for a debate. We are going to take all the questions, and as I mentioned, as I've shared, I said that I would share with all the members of the first panel. I'm kindly asking the members of the second panel as well to send them a brief with all the questions, and if they want to answer, to make them public then, so that everyone would actually see the feedback. I would, in the closure of this event, I would like to just mention a couple of important things. One of the main ideas is to act together. This was reiterated both by the public representatives and by the insights of the stakeholders from the private sector and associations. And this together means, for me as a member of the European Parliament, it is also, cross-political. So we don't need to politicize, the debate on the child guarantee. And this is actually one of the most important things that I'm actually looking at for the next period. Obviously, there are, political, angles to look at children. We can look at, the rights of the children and the fact that states need to deliver on the rights. We can also have the investment perspective that is about investment in the future, in the skills, in how the economy will actually work in the future. I would dare to say that right now there is a perfect momentum to say that we can work together, rights and investments and focusing on this particular agenda is being crucial. So I would actually try to build as many bridges as possible within the European Parliament and with any of the stakeholders, regardless, again, political views and so on. So that's the first thing, unity and cooperation. And the other thing that is really, really important is that within the member states, we need actually to have this, solidarity going on and, not to lose the lessons that we've learned during the pandemics where we've seen how we can help our neighbors, how we can help the vulnerable groups, how we can actually be there for the others. And I would really love to see that again as part of this, future that we are preparing through the RRF, through the ESF Plus, and so on. And last but not least, on the child guarantee, it is actually quite important to put pressure. We've seen that, for instance, when the social pillar was issued, it had no teeth. Right now, we are coming with an action plan a couple of years later. We would actually love to push from the European Parliament side the Commission and the Council, so to create a team together and to deliver. This is actually the motto of the Portuguese presidency, time to deliver. So when it comes to the child guarantee, it's just, I would say, just a Council recommendation. We need actually to push it further and be sure that the member states would actually take into account. So this being said, a lot of gratitude from my side for all the panelists and especially the audience that has been terrific and provided questions and feedback. This is not just the end of a conversation. This is just the beginning, I would say. We have right now some steps already made, again, with the funding and resources available. Available doesn't mean that it will actually be used for the right purpose. We have right now this window of opportunity with the Portuguese presidency with a high level social agenda culminating with the Porto Summit. And we as politicians and stakeholders, we need to try to come together there. And until the end of March, when the guarantee would actually be issued, we should actually try to shape it and prepare it as best as possible and coming with ideas that can actually be incorporated. We received in the European Parliament a survey from the Commission asking us how we see the most important issues in the guarantee. I'm sure that there are other consultations going on right now. So this would actually prepare us for shaping it, and then we are going to take it on board on implementation at European level, national level, local level, with the grassroots activity that you are doing. Again, a big thanks from my side. Thank you very much to all the panelists of today, and let's stay together and work together for what's going to come. It's the reset button that we want to push for the children in Europe, for the families, and it's a worthwhile cause to fight for. Thank you, and have a nice day. Thank you. Bye-bye.